Greetings, viewers. Eric the Car Guy here, back again with another show where I attempt to impart some automotive wisdom on those of you that are having issues with your vehicles. A few things before I get started. First, I will be taking the questions from the Google Plus event. You can get there from my Google Plus page. There was things that were sent out that have links to that. So if you're looking to get your question answered, I'd ask that you post it there. If you're watching this on YouTube, I cannot see those comments that are posted there. Apologies, so I won't be answering the YouTube questions. But those are all the things I'm not doing. However, the things I will do, EricTheCarGuy.com is always available for you. So you can go there 24/7, 365. There'll be a link to that in the description when everything concludes. There will also be links to other useful information. So if you have questions, you might want to check the description. You could find answers there. And a lot of those links lead back to EricTheCarGuy.com. So if you can't get answers on our FAQ page, sign up for a forum. And that's where I go to answer questions when I'm not here. Aside from that, let's see, the next show will be in 2 weeks. Today is the 7th, so the next show will be on the 21st. So if I miss your question today, I will catch it then. And lastly, I'm going to focus on questions that involve automotive repair related issues. And I'm not going to get into other things unless there's time, such as, you know, should I find a job in auto repair, that type of thing, which I have seen in the past. So we will get started here with our first question, which is the other thing is I sometimes mess up your names. I'm really sorry about that in advance. If I do that, I don't mean it. It's just I read strange sometimes. But our first question is from Justin Hodge, who has a 2001 GMC Jimmy 4.3 two-wheel drive manual, crank no starts sometimes. The car struggles to start on a semi-regular basis, has a slightly low idle, and sputters after it starts. When I remove the MAF sensor, it starts better. I've now replaced the MAF sensor and it starts fine for about 10 start cycles, and the issue has arrived again this morning. Roll starting the truck works like a charm every time, so I don't think it's fuel or spark. Still leaning towards a mixture issue, but I'm far from knowing what I'm talking about. I've done hours of basic diagnosis and would just appreciate a tip on where to start looking next. Other than the shutter at idle, 600 RPM, car run fine. New clutch, new tranny, no recent major work. Love your show. Just joined the website. Hope you can push me in the right direction. One more thing that he posts above this is, one more note, brake booster has failed as well, but this was weeks before the starting problem. I believe this can cause a massive vacuum leak, but don't see how, given its location, it could affect the start. Help there. Again, the car ran fine at the given mileage. Okay, my first question is, do you have a check engine light on? And if you have a check engine light on, it's very likely that there's a code stored there that could possibly point you in the direction of what's happening. If you don't have a check engine light on, that means the computer hasn't detected anything within its monitored systems that could be causing the condition that you're having. You say that it only happens on startup, which is odd that you don't, based on everything you're describing, that you don't have some other performance issues that might be happening just while you're generally driving down the road. So I'm reaching a little bit here trying to figure out what's going on. If you don't have any check engine lights, you got to look at the basics. And the basics are your tune-up items, things like that. You talk about new clutch, new transmission, that type of thing. It could be as simple as plugs and plugs wires sometimes. As far as the vacuum leak, yes, massive vacuum leaks can upset the mixture, but I can't see how you'd have something like that and not have a check engine light associated. A 2001 should be smart enough, so to speak, to notice an issue of that nature or something that is that wrong. The other place to go is mechanical. If there's mechanical problems, such as maybe you have a worn out timing chain or some other mechanical issue, a low compression somewhere, that could also cause a difficult starting problem. In addition, the condition of the battery. If the battery isn't all that great condition, so if you're able to start everything up and once it's running it's fine, there could be something going on with the battery that's causing this. If there's not enough current to run all those systems to start the engine up, there's a lot of amp load on the battery and starter and that whole system when you first start it up. It could draw enough away from those other systems to where they can't function properly, and therefore you have a no start or difficult start condition. And I'm going here because you say that you can push start it. So that is an interesting bit of information that could prove useful. But you've got a lot of questions here, or I have a lot of questions here that aren't quite answered in your post. And you mentioned that you're a member of the forum. So if the advice I've given you here doesn't help, there'll be a link in the description to an article that I wrote that contains videos about how to go about diagnosing no start situations that could possibly be helpful, or you can also post this to the forum. So hopefully that works out for you. Joshua Given. Hello, my mom's 2008 Kia Sedonia minivan is having problems with the transmission after a long trip. After driving about 2 hours at 70 miles per hour, when you get off the next exit and come to a stop and then go, the transmission slips. This happened a few times last year, but there wasn't any problem after that. About 3 weeks ago, after a long trip, same thing. It would slip after a long trip. It did not do it. It did it again yesterday too. Now it does it randomly after driving about 5 minutes. I looked online but didn't find much. What do you think? Thank you for making the videos. You have helped me so much. I was able to overhaul my engine in my S10 thanks to your videos. Thank you very much for that. Okay, now onto your transmission problem, Joshua. After a long drive. Well, my first question, anytime somebody comes to me with a problem with an automatic transmission situation at all, is have you checked the fluid level and condition? It's extremely important that an automatic transmission fluid has the proper amount of fluid in it. If the fluid is low, the transmission can't operate properly. It's a hydraulic system. So if it doesn't have the fluid inside of it, it doesn't work properly. And when I say condition, what I'd be looking for is air bubbles that you might find in the fluid on the dipstick when you remove the dipstick to inspect it. That's something else I'd be looking for. But the first step is to do that. Given that it's a 2008, once again, going back to check engine lights, do you have any? Because many times, especially with late model vehicles, they will set a code for a transmission problem such as this, especially if it's electrical. Or there's also speed sensors inside the transmissions that measure to see if there is slipping that's happening inside of it, and it sets a code for that. And that can usually help point you in the right direction. But the first and easiest step is to check that fluid level and condition. If it's low, top it off and see if the condition still exists. If it's at the proper level and you don't have any codes, that's a head scratcher for me. I would be surprised that if you would report back with that. So check the fluid level and condition. If you have a check engine light on, try to find some place that can pull those codes for you. They may need a special scanner that can read transmission codes. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need it for more specific transmission codes. OBD2 has general transmission codes that can come up, but if there's a specific problem that's happening with the transmission, it may come up on a more advanced scanner. But at least that can give you some idea of what might be happening inside that transmission that's causing this condition that you're having after long drives. Let's see, Welsh now. I have a 2001 PT Cruiser. Once in a while, it lacks power. Lift and floor gas repeated, and it comes out of it for a moment. And sometimes it hint if dieseling. Okay. Oh, the PS that goes, it gets worse when the AC is on. So I'm guessing that you have a performance issue with this 2001 PT Cruiser where it lacks power. A gajillion different things can cause this. Once again, check engine lights. Do you have a check engine light? And if so, what code do you have? That can help point you in the right direction. Basic tune-up items, your spark plugs, your air filter. Also restricted exhaust could be something else. I've got a video on how to check for an exhaust restriction. That can hamper engine performance. There are many things that can contribute to an engine performance problem. More information would be needed. What I'm going to suggest you do, there will be a link in the description to an article I wrote about diagnosing performance issues that goes through and has videos and things that could prove helpful to you. And that's the direction that I would try to steer you in with that. Let's see, Lorenzo Garza. Yeah, Garza. Eric, I love your show. I was doing a compression test on an Oldsmobile 455 engine, lucky you. And I noticed the fuel was shooting out of one of the spark plug holes every time I would crank the engine. What would cause that? And it smokes like crazy when running. Thank you for your time. Well, I would think that your compression test would have revealed something there. Fluid inside the cylinder is not good. Are you sure it was fuel and not coolant? Because if it was fuel, I would think, you say an Oldsmobile 455. I'm assuming it's older and I'm assuming it's carbureted. There would be more than one cylinder that would be affected if it was a fuel problem, is kind of what I'm getting at. So if there's too much fuel going in, I find it very unlikely that it would affect just one cylinder. It would affect at least four. Yours is not being affected that way, or at least you didn't describe that. What I'm thinking is maybe you have a head gasket or a coolant leak into the combustion chamber. It could be a head gasket, it could be a cracked head or a cracked block that could also contribute, and you kind of don't know until you get it apart. You can do a leak down test to help verify where that's going, but you really don't know exactly where it's going until you take it apart. But fluid inside the cylinder is really bad. It can bend connecting rods and eventually blow your engine, so you need to be very mindful of that. So it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. And the white smoke thing could be fuel, it could be coolant, but it's, like I say, it's a little weird that it would just be on one cylinder like that. So once again, link in the description to the performance diagnosis, which contains videos. Also contains a video on how to do that leak down test. All right, let's see. Andrew Denley, when bleeding brake fluid on a car with ABS and traction, etc., do you need to flush the new fluid through the system using a computer, or will a simple drain from each wheel get all the old fluid out? Great question. Okay, depends on the vehicle. And if you're just changing the brake fluid, this is what I recommend you do. Get a turkey baster, drain the master cylinder, just suck all the fluid out of the master cylinder and pour new fluid in. That will change the majority of the brake fluid. It won't change all of it, but it will change the majority. But if you're concerned about this issue, and you're concerned that you might need a scan tool to bleed, which you do need a scan tool to bleed some vehicles, not all vehicles, some vehicles. So you need specific information on the vehicle that you have. For the most part, you can bleed at the wheels and you're good. But some vehicles don't like that so much, and it's the ABS system that gets in your way. So you really need to know what vehicle you're working on. And since you didn't list it here, I'm not sure if I can help you, but a lot of times it's the GM vehicles that seem to need the scan tool in order to bleed the brake fluid out. All right, Marshall Zelena. Greetings, Eric. First off, thank you for all you do. You've helped me fix so many issues on my car and my family and friends' cars. You're an inspiration to me, and I plan on becoming a mechanic. Hey, good for you, man, and thank you for saying that. So now to my question. It has a 2000 Hyundai Accent with 268,000 miles on it. I'm getting ready to replace the hydraulic valve lifters in an attempt to cure the ticking sound that recently developed. My service manual is telling me that before I remove the rocker arm assembly, that I need to get the piston to TDC. What is that? Also, are there any plans doing a video centered around these style of lifters? All right, Marshall. First of all, I'm going to say, back the truck up for a minute. How do you know it's the lifters, number one? You have an engine with 268,000 miles on it. That's quite a few miles. There's quite a few things that could be worn out. I would suggest before you go for lifters is that you check the oil pressure and make sure the oil pressure is good, because low oil pressure can cause a host of problems, and you can put new lifters inside that engine and have a zero result, wasting a bunch of time and money. In addition, it's not a good practice to just replace lifters. Lifters are worked by the camshaft. So, and they're designed to work together. Camshafts aren't really flat across the top of the lobe. They actually have sort of a slight slant to them. Lifters, the bottoms of them, are slightly dome shaped. And the reason they do this is so that every time the cam lobe comes around, it spins the lifter into a new location. If you put new lifters on an old cam, it can wear out the cam in a rapid way. But it also depends on the type of cam. And I'm not exactly familiar with the type of cam that's used in this vehicle. But my point is that you just don't want to go in saying, that sounds like lifters, and do that. Next, oil. Have you decided to switch to synthetic oil or some different viscosity oil recently? If so, this could be the cause of your problem. The noise could be a result of lack of lubrication. It could be low oil pressure. It could be the type of lubricant that you're using. It could just be good old-fashioned worn out. 268,000 miles is a lot of miles. And what I'm getting at is, don't waste your time on an engine of this mileage and this age and trying to nitpick it and put it back together. If it is the lifters, or you do find it to be the lifters, let it make noise. Let it make noise till it blows up and replace the whole engine. I think you'd be better off doing that than trying to just sort of piece things together. If you want to practice your mechanical skill, fine. But if you're curious about these things, then I would definitely consult with the service manual. And TDC means top dead center. It means the piston is all the way up to the top of its travel when you do the removing. And that, I'm assuming they're doing because, and they probably want it to be on the compression stroke, because they want the valve strings to be relieved when you remove them. Because if not, those valve springs have pressure because those cam loads are pushing on them, And as a result, you have a lot more difficulty. So I would definitely, you say you have a service manual, but I would read through that procedure carefully. But before I'd even go there, I'd check the oil pressure and make sure that's good. Make sure the condition of the rest of the engine is sound, because if not, you're just kind of wasting your time. And if you end up replacing the engine, hey, that's a good way to develop your mechanical skills. It familiarizes you with a lot of those systems. Just throwing that out there. But a lot of people come to me and say, hey, I want to replace the lifters in my car. And I'm like, oh, hold on there a minute. You might want to reconsider that and make sure that that's what you need to do before you start diving into a job like that. So proceed with caution, take a little time, do a little bit of research, see if you can pinpoint the problem first, and then make sure that it is okay to replace just the lifters and not just, instead of just like the cam and lifters or something like that. Cat Valentine, hey Eric, what could cause rocker arm retaining bolts of the exhaust side to unscrew by themselves such that the rockers get totally loose and no longer actuating the exhaust valve? This happened on a 1.9 liter EFI Ford engine with 94,000 miles. Thank you. I don't know if there's perhaps a service bulletin on something like this that could give you some direction. I don't know specifically about this problem, but what I'm thinking is use Loctite. And it's a compound. It's sort of like a little, it's almost like glue that you put on the threads of something. It's also called thread locker. And what it does is it helps retain fasteners in situations like this. It could be that the fasteners are worn out, or it could be something that's inherent to this engine that I'm not familiar with. So if I can find something, I'll try and post it for you. But often questions like this for me are best answered on the forum, on my forum over at EricTheCarGuy.com, because I can give you those links and there can be that interaction. So if you strike out there, I would ask that you post this over at the forum and we'll see if we can help you over there. But honestly, I don't know for sure if there's an issue with that engine with those rocker arms coming loose. But good find, by the way. A lot of people overlook mechanical issues causing performance problems. So you were able to find that. So give yourself a pat on the back, because a lot of people replace every sensor on the vehicle before they look at the actual mechanical operation of the engine. So you did well. I just wish I could be of more help to you, and I apologize for that. All right. Nathan Jones. Hey, Eric, thanks for all of your and Brian's hard work to help out complete strangers. I'm moving forward with a manual transmission swap in my 2003 BMW 530i. Do you think removing the old automatic transmission is viable for someone without air tools or a lift? Also, what are your opinions on dual mass flywheels and self-adjusting clutches? BMW use them on their cars, but popular opinion recommends converting to a lighter solid flywheel with a normal clutch. Thoughts? Thanks. My thoughts? Don't do it. And the reason, this is a 2003 BMW. It is designed to have an automatic transmission in it. You going in there and putting a manual transmission, thinking that all you have to do is go in there and put a manual transmission, I think you're going to find that it's a little more than just that. There's a computer in that vehicle running that engine and that transmission. If it doesn't see the transmission it was designed to run, it's going to kind of freak out. You're going to check engine light. You may get engine performance problems along with that as well. I just don't recommend automatic to manual swaps on modern vehicles. I personally think it's a complete waste of time. I think you're better off getting a vehicle with a manual and working with that. If you love the car, great. But whenever you change things on modern vehicles, they're designed to work and operate a certain way under certain conditions. And there's a computer, there's a wiring harness, there's all these other things involved with that. Back in the day, like my Fairmont, I'm going from an automatic to a manual in the Fairmont. There's one vacuum line and I think 2 wires, maybe 3. No, yeah, there's about 2 wires going to for like the reverse light switch. And maybe that's it. Maybe not even that. Maybe it's just the neutral safety switch is the only wiring it has. Swapping over to a manual in that thing, no problem. Swapping over to a manual in a newer vehicle, as I said, there's a lot more involved with that. So as far as all your converting and doing all this stuff, consult with your BMW friends, people that have done it before. I'm not saying people haven't done it before, but I can't say working on German cars is, I prefer to work on Asian vehicles. I've found German cars, at least for me, to be a bit more difficult. As far as doing it on the ground, yeah, sure, you can do it on the ground with enough determination, time, and effort. Just because I'm very fortunate to have a lift in my shop. It does make things a lot easier. But for many, many years, you've seen on my show that I worked without it. And I did a lot of things, including engine and transmission replacements. So it's not impossible. More difficult? Yes, not impossible. So what I recommend is you find a vehicle with a manual that you like and trade it for this one is what I would recommend you do. If you want to go ahead and try it and come up with something and learn something, that's great. Yeah, but if you're asking me, my opinion, that's my opinion. Let's see. Nadita Roy, does a new car need a proper break-in on rear differential? I've heard that a new differential should be giving a cool-off period of 30 minutes for every 15 minutes driven for the first 100 miles. Also, does the maximum speed need to be limited to a new car to 55 miles per hour, especially with all-wheel drive? I'm planning to pick up a new Toyota Sienna all-wheel drive minivan that only has 4 miles on it. I will drive it about 100 miles back to my home, and would like to ensure that the differential isn't negatively affected by the relatively long trip on a new vehicle. Thank you. That's a valid question and a valid concern, but I don't think you have anything to be concerned about for a couple of reasons. First of all, the differential is, yeah, it heats up and things, but it's not one of those critical components as far as braking. I mean, it's set, it's good, it's good. I wouldn't be concerned about the differentials needing any kind of special attention, other than check your owner's manual. The owner's manual will list the type of things that you should, or the type of driving that you should do when you first get a vehicle. I know these days on newer vehicles, they're like a phone book in a lot of cases, but that's going to give you the best information as far as all that stuff goes. The second thing I'm going to point out, this is a brand new vehicle. It's going to be under warranty for some time. If there is an issue with that differential, you can take it back to them and have them deal with it under warranty. That's one of the great things about having a new vehicle, is just taking it in and saying, here, it's your problem. And that's one of the reasons why I recently bought a certified used vehicle, because I know that if there's something that's going to go wrong with it, it's not my problem. It's the problem of the people that sold me the vehicle, at least for a predetermined amount of time. So take advantage of that. And I wouldn't concern myself with that, but check the owner's manual just to be safe. I don't believe there's anything special that you need to do with the differential. I think it'd be just fine with that drive. Enjoy it. Have a good time. Let's see. All right, David Jones. Hey, first, hey, ETCG, first, thanks for the help and inspiration to work on my own car. You've literally saved me thousands of dollars. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. I have a 1998 Civic hatchback manual transmission with a D16Y7, and it randomly stalls out on me. Not sure if it's an engine miss or not, because I've never experienced one to know how it feels and what happens. What happens is, on any distance drive, the RPMs will do one of three things: drop all the way down to 0, and the car will die, in which case I turn the key to the off position. Then on position, the car will fire right back up, and it will drive fine. I'm told the backfire, I missed the backfire part. The backfire is due to the exhaust system being straight piped. The second situation is that the car will flat out die. The RPMs will hit 0 and nothing gets it started. I've noticed it will only start after I sit for a few minutes and push it for about 10 feet, and then it will fire right back up and be fine. The third situation is that the RPMs will drop to 0, then almost instantly shoot back up to normal. I've been told this could be the cam position sensor or main relay. Engine is stock and has a new distributor. I should also note that it happens randomly at any distance of driving. I've driven to work and had it stall 2 days in a row, and the next week it won't stall at all and work fine. Thanks for your help. You know, before I even got to the end of reading your statements, there was I was thinking there's an aftermarket distributor on this car, and then you said you put a new distributor on it. Now, was this problem occurring before or after the distributor? And my experience has been, I haven't found an aftermarket distributor that works well on Hondas. I would rather put a used, out of a junkyard Honda distributor on than a lot of the aftermarket distributors that I've seen that are out there. And you get the exact problem that you're having. It sounds like igniter or ignition coil problem. I have actually a video about diagnosing this, but you could really only diagnose it when the problem is happening. It could also be the cam sensor, which is housed inside of that distributor. So if the distributor isn't up to snuff, well, then that could be the cause of all of these problems. Your straight piped exhaust, I'm not even going to go there, but it sounds to me like you've done stuff. And anytime you do stuff to a stock system and alter it from its, you know, maybe you've added some other tachometer or something, I don't know. But if you've altered the system, that could also affect its performance as well. So it's kind of an iffy kind of thing. But once again, the performance diagnosis article that I've written has a lot of information on how to pursue this, and a lot of it is Honda specific. So I would suggest you read through that. There will be a link to that in the description down below that you can check out. But I get this a lot. I get people that with Hondas that have similar complaints where the RPMs will just drop to 0 and it will die, and it's almost always an ignition problem. Main relays cause no starts. I've never seen main relays cause them just to stall. I've never seen main relays cause stalling problems. I've seen it cause plenty of no start problems. What I normally see with Hondas is problem with the ignition system, but there's very rarely problems with fuel delivery on Hondas on stock systems. If they've been altered, well, then there could be issues. But for the most part, I found ignition problems. And many of those ignition problems I've traced back to aftermarket distributors. Just saying. Also, they set codes. The older ones like that, well, actually that's OBD2, so you'll be able to pull the code. But if you do the flashy light thing, it usually sets like a code 4, I believe, for the cam sensor if that's an issue. Moving on. Once again, I'm sticking to auto repair related questions. If there's time at the end, I'll go back to the other questions that fall outside of that. Yeg B. Hey, Eric, first of all, thanks for all of your hard work on YouTube throughout the years. I especially love the day in the life videos. I like those too, so thanks. And I don't have to focus on any one thing. I can just work. It's kind of nice to be able to do that. Anyway, he has a 2003 Nissan Maxima SE automatic transmission with 140,000 miles on it. I have a problem with my brakes. The problem is that when driving on the highway, 65 plus miles an hour, my brake pedal kind of stops working. When I need to brake, I press the brake pedal and there is no resistance whatsoever. I do not feel the car begin to stop. And then I pump the pedal up and down 3 or 4 times and the car will finally begin to slow down. Once the problem begins happening, this persists even at lower speeds until I turn the car off and come back to drive it the next day. Again, this problem only appears if I'm driving on the highway. This never happens when I'm just driving around town or in the neighborhood at speeds of 40 to 50 miles per hour. Went to the dealership for this problem and they replaced my pads and rotors and said this would fix the problem, but it didn't help. I also asked them to change the brake fluid and they said they did, and the problem is still there. I searched around and found that a soft brake pedal could be related to a master cylinder. However, my pedal never sinks to the floor when I'm stopped at a light. I also posted on the forum, and one of the guys there said if my exhaust system was too close to the brake lines, then it could be heating the fluid to the point of evaporation, causing a soft brake pedal. The muffler rusted off and the rest of my exhaust, so I think this could actually be relevant. What do you think? Thanks again for all you do. I love my forum. There are a lot of very smart people that hang out at my forum, and the fact that you have an exhaust issue and this only happens when you're driving on the highway, it doesn't happen when you're driving around normally. If you have a problem with your base braking system and there's a leak somewhere or a problem with the master cylinder, it normally manifests itself all the time. Like whenever there's no driving on the highway that coincides with it. If you've got a problem with hydraulic leaking or a problem with the hydraulic system with the brakes, it's most of the time. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it where it's not there all the time. What you describe, I was kind of scratching my head a little bit until you started talking about the exhaust. Absolutely. If the brake fluid is heated up, as if you're driving on the highway for a long period of time, and maybe that exhaust is pointed right at a brake line or something and superheating that brake fluid will overheat and you'll lose your brake pedal. It basically boils is what happens. And you get something like air in the system, and then it cools down and becomes a liquid again, and then it works. So that theory that was suggested on the forum is a really good theory, and something I suggest you would track down and repair your exhaust system and see if this condition still exists. But do this sooner rather than later. You don't want to be driving on the highway and have no brakes. I mean, that's a serious safety issue. So you need to address this sooner rather than later. I would say start with that exhaust is what I'd recommend. And I'll try and follow you on the forum to see if that actually was what addressed your issue. Okay, let's see. All right, here you go with the names. Balraj Singhi Mathru. Okay. Hey, Eric, firstly, I want to say big thanks for the dedication to posting educational automotive videos. They help me and my friends greatly down here in Kenya and inspire me to work on cars. Thank you. And hello, Kenya. I have a first generation Mitsubishi Pajero 2.0 four-cylinder. The car runs great. However, the car has started to make a lot of squeaky noise whenever I drive. It begins to quiet down when I drive on smooth roads. I'm sure it is not coming from the engine. I don't know whether it's from the suspension or something is loose. What do I do? Well, in some ways, you kind of answered your own question. You said it changes when you're on a smooth road. I would suspect that it's suspension related. And as far as how to find that, I've actually done videos about this. And one of the things to look for that's a real good indicator of a suspension component that might be going bad. I just recently did a video on replacing stabilizer links on a Jeep Wrangler. And in that, I was able to show there was a stabilizer link in the back that had some orange dust around the outside. This is what you look for. Those moving components, that they're ball joints or just any suspension component that starts to get loose or it loses its lubrication. It starts to just sort of grind against itself. And when it does that, that's when you start to see that orange dust, because that's what it is, just a little bit of corrosion. And basically like a mortar and pestle, it just sort of gets ground down. And that's a very good indicator of what might be making noise. So that's where I would look around. Also, I'm not sure what type of suspension this has, but if it has leaf springs in the back, I've seen leaf springs cause noises like this. So look between the leaf springs and see if you see that orange dust down in there. That could be a good indicator that is what's causing your noise. So a good visual inspection. Also, you know, see if you can get the wheels up off the ground and move them left to right and top to bottom to see if you feel anything loose that way. That can also point you in the direction of something like that. So look around for orange dust, look for loose components. That's where I would go. And sometimes, I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with this vehicle, but some of these vehicles have serviceable grease fittings. So I've got a video on that also. So you can sometimes pump a little bit of grease inside those ball joints or tie rod ends or those types of things. And that lubrication can quiet the noise and also make steering effort, or just the suspension will work better as a result. So that's a good place to start with that. Jack Macaulay, hey Eric, just curious what you recommend for maintaining a hood latch. I've had several in the past that don't want to close after you've done some work on the car. P.S. I think it would make a good video, stay dirty. Well, in a way, I do have a video coming up on that, because the Fixing It Forward project that I'm actually about to wrap up tomorrow on the Ford Contour involves the hood latch. Hood latches get old, and they're right on the front of the vehicle. And if you live in an area where there's a lot of, well, salt stuff on the road in the winter, I see the problem a lot. And I've seen it a lot on Asian vehicles, in particular Hondas, to where it'll just stay stuck open. But you can go in there with a screwdriver and just sort of click it so that it can latch again, and away you go. I've tried everything. I've tried different types of lubricant, tried penetrating oil, all that stuff. But the thing is you get it to work for 5 minutes, but you don't open the hood again for maybe a month or more. And then when you go to open it up again, the problem is still there. The only thing that I've found that could work is to take the hood latch, take it all apart, clean all the parts, put it all back together, get rid of the corrosion, because that's what it is. It's corrosion that's jamming up the mechanism most times. Sometimes it's a cable that's sticking as well. So there's other components that could be at play. I've seen cables cause problems. In fact, that was the case with the Ford that I repaired. That being said, it's kind of a take it as it comes kind of thing, because hood latches are only a problem when they're a problem. And it's one of those kind of things where it's kind of a pain in the butt to deal with or fix. So it kind of gets ignored until you just can't stand it anymore. And you may be to that point. But as I said, you may end up either replacing that latch, or if you want, remove the latch assembly, and clean it all up, put it all back together. And some of them you can't. Some of them are like riveted together. Some of them you can't disassemble. So that's where you may have to go. But also make sure that the cable is moving freely. Because if the cable isn't moving freely, then you got nothing. All right. I'm going to jump to somebody who recently posted a question. Let's see. Mark Devins. I have a 1996 Mercury Mystique with auto trans. When I go from park to reverse, it does nothing. I have to go down to neutral and back up for it to engage. Same with drive. I have to go first, back up to D and then engage. Also, the OD light flashes when I start it. Any idea what this could be? It is a console shifter. I've had plenty of people say linkage. Oh, wait, your thing just moved around. Anytime somebody posts a question, everything moves around. I've had people say linkage, but also torque converter. Any help? Common misconception. A lot of people come to me, their transmission isn't working right. Torque converter. I'm going to put a link in the description to a video I did about how torque converters actually operate. Torque converters can fail, but they don't necessarily cause shifting problems like what you're describing. What you're describing sounds like you need a transmission. Check the fluid level and condition, but also it sounds like you have a code stored. Earlier I mentioned that if you have a transmission problem, check for codes. It sounds like you do have a code. And if you have some of the codes that say, basically slipping clutches, that type of thing, that might be the end of it. 96 was like the first year for OBD2, so I'm not sure how much information you get from the transmission on that. But from what I'm hearing, check the fluid level and condition. If it's got air bubbles in it, or if the fluid level's low or something of that nature, or it's, instead of being red, it's like a dark brown, it may be all over for that transmission, if I'm honest. And if I'm not mistaken, I almost think that those vehicles were known for transmission issues. So there you go. Now I'll do a couple more. Let's see. Gert Rear. Hey Eric, I own a 2001 Pontiac 4-door 2.4. It has an issue where the security light comes on and the car has trouble starting. I took it to the dealer and they won't help. I'm sure they would help, but I'm sure they would want to charge you money for it. The GM, I believe it's called the pass lock system, is a system that's anti-theft. And if it's not registering your key or there's a problem with it, then it won't allow the vehicle to start. That's the whole point. It's a security thing. And it may, unfortunately, the dealer may be the only people that can help you with that. Those systems are designed in such a way to be proprietary, to where like not everybody can get into the system and diagnose things. Or, some aftermarket shops can purchase some high-end scan tools and things that can access this information and allow them to work with that. But if a component needs to be replaced within that system, then it's going to need to be relearned so that it works with the vehicle. And in order to do that, many times you need dealer access and a dealer scan tool. It sucks, but it's keeping you from getting your vehicle stolen. I wish you luck with that. Let's see if we can get another one in here. All right, Zach Hart. Hey, Eric, has a 2000 Honda Fit and my brakes make a creaking sound when coming to a stop, literally like a bed creaking. The noise slows down the car when it comes to a stop. Now the sound has been happening on and off for a few years, and the Honda dealership got the noise to stop for a while with brake cleaner about a year ago. Unfortunately, I warped my rotors a few months ago and had to slam on the brakes, and my friend and I changed the rotors and brake pads. A few weeks after that, the sound is now back. I've done some Googling on the issue, and other people with this problem can't seem to figure it out what it is. Other than that, brakes work fine and are still smooth. Got any ideas? Love the show. Thanks. Well, first of all, a #1 complaint about brakes that I get is noise. Once again, I've written an article about it, link in the description. What you described, though, creaking sound when coming to a stop may not be the brakes. And this may be why targeting the brakes hasn't worked up to this point. It could be something in the suspension. Maybe there's a ball joint or a stabilizer link or something like that that is worn out. And when you stop, the front end of the vehicle will dive down because the weight is transferring. And as a result, it compresses certain suspension parts. Now, you may not hear this while you're driving down the road. It may only happen during the slow movement of coming to a stop. So you may have a suspension component that's actually causing this noise and not the brakes. As far as brake noise is concerned, the #1 cause of that is the materials you use. So if you buy cheap brake pads, a lot of times they're going to make noise. So that could be coming into play here. I like ceramics. Ceramics seem to be quiet, and they seem to last well and just have good stopping characteristics. And that's what I normally put on people's cars, so they don't have to deal with it. Yes, they cost a bit more, but I don't deal with things like brake noise. Also, brake service is really important. How you address and take care of the caliper when you do replace those pads is also important. I've got a video on that. So, proper lubricants in the right places, all those types of things go a long way to help prevent brake noise. So since you've got new rotors and pads and you still have the noise, I'm saying not likely to be an issue with the brakes. I'm saying check the suspension, see if you got an issue there. Earlier I mentioned checking for orange dust around suspension components. That can be a good giveaway as far as what might be causing a noise. But the other thing to do is just, try and walk around the car and just sort of compress the corners and see if you can get it to make the noise while it's just sitting still. That might be a way for you to find it. Sometimes noises can be tricky to nail down, but you got to do what you can to try to duplicate those conditions. And if it's happening at slow speeds when you're slowing down, maybe you can get into a parking lot or something, have a friend stand outside the car and see if they hear the noise coming from the brakes, either the front or sometimes the back. I've actually been looking for a noise in the front and found out it was in the back. So look at the whole vehicle, not just the front where you suspect it's coming from. You may be surprised. One last thing I'll put in there, exhaust. I have found this at times as well, because as you brake, the engine can move also. And as the engine moves, the entire exhaust system moves. I've seen some aftermarket exhaust parts that were bent in such a way to where they didn't quite fit right, and they might come in contact with the body sometimes or a suspension component. And when they do, they can transfer or create a noise. So look for that. I've just take the exhaust system and push it back and forth and see if you can make it make that noise. I think that you're going to find your noise someplace else besides the brakes. And with that, I'm going to close this one down. I've run over. These shows are normally 30 minutes. I'm giving you an extra 10. Next show, as I mentioned, will be on, looks like October 21st. And that will be the last one for a bit, because the week after that, or the week or the show after that, I'll be actually in Las Vegas for SEMA. Yay, that's cool. If I didn't get to your question today, I apologize for that. As I said, we can do this again on the 21st. And the way to do this, if you notice, I usually start at the bottom and work my way up. Post your questions early, just a little tip. And I usually make the announcement about the show the Friday before the show actually comes out. And I think that show on the 21st, I'm going to have to check, but that show on the 21st may be a live show, or maybe an hour-long show. So I may be adding more into there. I'll have more information on that when I make the announcement. Also, EricTheCarGuy.com, always there. I've mentioned it several times, includes many of those articles that I mentioned. Also that forum that some of the people also mentioned. So, and once again, if you're posting your automotive questions to the YouTube video, I cannot see those, and I apologize. I will not be answering those. However, we will wrap this up. And there's a welcome video at EricTheCarGuy.com to tell you about the features we have to help you over there. If you wish to connect with me socially, I can be found on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, also Instagram. And I close each of my videos, including this live show, which I want to thank you for watching, with be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I will see you next time. This is the part where I try and click the thing.